Hello and welcome to episode 52 of the SU Coaching Podcast. I'm your host, Anna Manning, and today we have a conversation episode with a former coaching client, Daniela. And I'm going to leave Daniela to introduce herself and tell you about her experience with confidence coaching and the outcomes and changes she's made since we coached together back in the summer of 2021. But before we dive into this episode, I just wanted to remind you that we have the free masterclass, Grow Your Professional Confidence, happening on the 26th of July, and it's 2023. That's going to be at 6:30 London time in the evening. You are invited to come and join us in that class. And if you can't join us live, don't worry, sign up anyway and you'll get the replay. So that class basically takes everything you've learned in the podcast and puts it all together to help you figure out where your confidence is at right now and why your confidence is where it is and how you can grow it. So, what exactly do you need to do? What exactly do you need to work on? Do you need to focus on in order to grow your confidence? And you'll go away from that class with your own individualized plan to grow your confidence this year. It's a great class. I've run it about 10 times now and I'm going to keep running it. So, you are invited into that class with us. It's free. You will find the link in the show notes. So, without further ado, go and sign up for that class and enjoy my conversation with Daniela. Hello, Daniela, and welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Anna.
First off, I'm just going to invite you to introduce yourself to our podcast listeners. And if you could tell people a little bit about what you do, what your professional life is.
Sure, yeah. So my name is Daniela, and I am a healthcare scientist. I've been working in the NHS for nearly 10 years now. The first couple of years in Italy, which is my home country, and then 8 years here in the UK, in London. I currently work for King's College Hospital Foundation Trust. I'm the Trust Medical Device Safety Officer here. Essentially, my main responsibility is to ensure that end user report adverse incident involving medical equipment. And my responsibility is to review those incidents, investigate with my team, to understand what the root causes were, what the contributory factors were, and then ensure that any learning is shared across the organization so that the same incident does not repeat over time. We approach investigation with a system thinking approach. So it's not about finding out who did something wrong, but it's more about understanding what the system failures were, what the contributory factors were, and can we put processes in place so that people don't make the same mistake, essentially.
Yeah. And that it sounds fascinating. And when you say we look at things with that systems approach and you describe how you do that. So it's not about, oh, who did what wrong? It's more about, okay, what happened? And let's look at it and we'll investigate and see if we can prevent it from happening again.
Yeah.
It just occurs to me that for so many of us, the way we handle ourselves when something goes wrong is totally different to that.
Yeah, I have to say that I don't apply the same methodology when I do something wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's true for most people. Like our methodology, I presume you apply that methodology, that systems methodology, because you know that it works.
Exactly. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
But when it comes to ourselves, we apply a completely different methodology.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Where we're like, no, I'm such an idiot. I did everything wrong. And then I blame myself for 3 weeks. And
Yeah, that's correct.
And I know that people listening to the podcast will be nodding their head and understand and probably do that too. So For people listening to the podcast, Daniela is a former coaching client, and Daniela was one of the women in the very first round of the Confident at Work program, which kicked off in June 2021. So it was 2 years ago.
Exactly, yes.
And we just had a quick chat before we press record and came on the podcast, and I shredded the notes a long time ago, so I was kind of trying to remember what the things were that Daniela first came with and the things that we coached on. And she also said, well, I can't remember all of the content of the conversations, but I know what the outcomes were of doing that work and being a part of that program. And that's really what I've invited Daniela to come and talk to you guys about today. So it's great to hear it from me, and it's interesting to hear it from me about the kinds of things that we need to address, the internal things that we need to address to build our confidence. But better to actually hear it from someone who's been there, done it, and then seen what the outcomes are. So can you share with us, Daniela, what have some of the outcomes been for you of being in the Confident at Work program and doing that work?
Yes, sure. So I think that one of my main reasons to join your coaching journey is that I had a huge fear of public speaking. And as part of my job role, I do lots of presentations, and I was basically terrified every time I had to do one. And over time, I built a lot of coping mechanisms that were basically governing my whole life. So before the presentation, for example, I would over prepare to the point that I could perhaps cancel a dinner with friends because I had to prepare for my presentation the next day. And I remember around May 21, I joined a confidence masterclass that you were giving to the Women's Leadership Network. And in that session, I realized that other people were having the same issues as me, and that there were perhaps methodologies and tools that someone can use to, overcome that kind of behavior, which is why then I joined your course. So what's different now in that area is that I no longer worry about what I would be worrying before. And that's mainly because I don't have such a loud inner voice.
Yeah. And before, when you would find yourself really over preparing and maybe even canceling dinner with friends, what was it that loud inner voice, what was actually happening?
A lot of things. I think it was a little bit of imposter syndrome to start with. So I will have thoughts like, am I the right person to do this presentation? Do people want to listen from me? But also things like, I'm very conscious about my English being imperfect, because English is my second language. So I'm always conscious that by mispronouncing something, I can, people maybe cannot understand what I say, or I have this fear of being misunderstood. So when I was doing presentation, for me, it was like doing a performance. So it was more about me speaking well rather than me concentrating on the message that I had to deliver. So I think that through your course and by talking to you, I realized that I was focused on myself. There was an ego point of view, right? It was about me performing well, me speaking well, rather than focusing on my message, which is the most important thing. So by being conscious about that, I now worry more about the message that I'm delivering and not how I deliver it. So I no longer over prepare. I normally put together my presentation and I don't go with a script, because I know that I'm only telling people what I've worked in the last couple of months, and I know that I don't need to prepare. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And what changed for you? Like, how does it feel to do that presentation now?
If it feels completely different. I'm in the room now. I'm not talking with myself. While before, while I was delivering my presentation, I was also speaking with my inner critic and having thoughts like, oh my gosh, my tone of voice is so boring. Does it make sense what I'm saying? I no longer have those conversations, or at least most of the time I don't.
Yeah. Well, I can imagine that makes things a bit easier.
Yeah, because if you're having conversation with yourself while you're trying to present data, you have a foggy brain.
Absolutely. Yeah. And now you said you don't have a script and you're not listening to the voice inside your brain. So what are you doing when you're giving a presentation now?
I guess that as I don't have a script, I need to concentrate on the message that I'm delivering. So I no longer have time to engage with my inner critic. It's probably as simple as that.
Yeah. And does it feel different?
It feels different, yeah.
How?
You may remember that we talk about, you always ask me, how do you feel in that moment, right? What physical sensation you have. And before I would go red, I would have palpitations, I will feel very nervous, while now I'm at ease. It feels like magic. It obviously isn't, because I've been practicing for the last couple of years, but one day overnight, I realized that I no longer have all of that.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember you sending me an email saying, what did you do to me? Like, oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's just a switching in perspective in how you see things.
Mm.
So, before it was me having to deliver the presentation as I've written it the week before and as I rehearsed it the night before. Well, now it's like, I'm going to tell these people what I know. And I know it's because it's my work, it's what I've done,
Yeah.
in the last couple of months.
Yeah. It sounds like you trust yourself more now.
Yeah.
Well, I think there's probably quite a few people listening that will identify with some of the things you're saying. So that inner critical voice, having to really over prepare and script everything to make sure that everything goes fine, really thinking about, am I articulating correctly? Like, am I saying everything correctly? And then it just kind of ends up being a performance rather than,
Yeah.
yeah. And that, for anyone listening, that's not something that's just something that Daniela struggled with. That's something that a lot of people struggling with, and maybe even you who are listening struggle with that too, because I coach on that all the time. I actually coached somebody the other day who was saying that they had a 5-minute presentation and they said they thought that they'd prepared it for about 16 hours.
Yeah.
Which
that was a couple of years ago.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I thought, oh well, if she's listening to this episode, you can do what Daniela did and just make your notes the day before and then just go in and do it. What does that mean for your work life or the rest of your life that you don't have to spend so much time over preparing?
I definitely have a better private life because I can spend time with my friends, with my husband, with my dog, rather
Mm-hmm.
than being home over preparing. But it's also affecting positively my work life because I'm not as tired as before. And instead of spending, I don't know, 10 hours a week preparing my presentation, I can actually do some work.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's a massive improvement. And I mean, this was also affecting other area of my work. Even in work meetings, for example, I would avoid saying something because of my fear of um, speaking in a wrong way, right?
Mm.
So instead of sharing my thoughts now and there, I will think like, okay, I'll say next time because I need time to actually write down what I want to say, ensure that it makes sense, ensure that I have evidence of what I'm doing. While now I feel better in sharing my thoughts as they are, my raw thoughts.
Yeah. And what difference does that make for you?
I think it makes a difference to the quality of my work because often my thoughts are important really and can trigger conversation with the people I'm meeting that conversation that may not be happening if I hadn't shared that specific thought.
That's really interesting. And thinking about the context of your work is patient safety, right? That's
It
what
is, yeah.
ultimately you're doing. The fact that you sharing your thoughts could improve patient safety, it seems like a valuable thing for you to do.
Yeah. And I
Mm.
think that that's the shift that I had. So it's no more about me all the time, but it's about what's important to me. What's important to me is patient safety, right? At the end of the day. So I now ask myself, is it more important to deliver this piece of information now in perfect English, or is it better to hold on and ensure that I have the right words? But often it's the first option, right? Because a message delivered a few days after, it may be completely relevant. So I guess that my focus is different now. It's about my work rather than me.
Mm. Yeah, that sounds like it would be more, relaxing. Is that the right word?
Yes, definitely.
Although you just said that you've been on holiday and this is your first day back at work, and it's not, I don't think you're feeling very relaxed today.
No, no, to be honest.
Oh. So one of the things that I remember us really speaking about when you did the program was as we kind of coach through this fear of public speaking and presentations, and then thinking about speaking up in meetings, and having conversations with senior people, you you came to realize that actually the problems with confidence weren't just affecting your professional life, they were also affecting your personal life. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yes, I remember telling you that I felt nervous with my CEO, but also with my neighbor when I was walking the dog at the same level. So, my low confidence was not limited to my professional environment, but it was also affecting my private life. So I used to feel uncomfortable every time I was basically at the center of attention.
Mm. Yeah.
And again, it's because I used to go in performance mode every time I had to talk to people. regardless, what the environment was or what their seniority was.
Mm. And what changed?
I guess it's difficult to pinpoint what has changed. I guess that, first of all, knowing that I'm not the only one having these kind of issues changed a lot, because I always thought that it was me, right? I'm shy, I'm timid, I'm reserved, and that's the way I am. I cannot do anything to change it. While when I became aware that actually there are tools and methods that one can use to change, things have actually changed.
Yeah. And I've just remembered something that really stuck with me, that you said, I'm shy and I'm timid and I've always been that way. And that's kind of just the way it is. That's how it is. And a lot of people believe that. And I remember exploring with you, are you like that
Yeah.
in all the different
Yeah.
areas of your life? And you said, actually, no.
No, I'm the opposite. When I'm with my people, my inner circle, I'm the opposite. I overshare, I speak all the time, I'm quite bubbly. Yeah, I remember when you asked me that, I was like, well, actually, that's not my nature. I'm like, I have two different nature, one with my people and one with others.
Mm,
Um, yeah, and I'm still working on that. It's not that I've changed completely.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, it's much better now.
Yeah. Do you have 1.5 natures now instead of two?
I do many actually.
And what's it like now with the dog walkers?
Well, I have more conversation for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I let the other person leave the conversation rather than leaving before, because I think that I'm sounding boring.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I have to force myself sometimes. It doesn't come naturally,
Mm.
but it's working.
I remember you sent me a picture of you with loads of other dog walkers. Was it from your building or from your area?
Yeah, yeah.
And I was just like, oh my God, there she is with all the dog walkers. And you have the cutest dog.
Yeah, I do. I do.
And I noticed when I was in Italy that is a very popular kind of dog.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah, loads of people have got those cute dogs.
Yeah, I guess it's a mountain dog. Yeah.
Hmm. Anyway, enough about dogs. One of the other areas that I remember that we looked at and we coached on was your relationship with, let's call him Bob.
Yeah.
Tell us a bit about what that was like and how that
So
felt. Yeah.
another of my let's call them weaknesses is the incapacity to say no, mainly at work. So if I'm asked to do something, even if it's not pertinent to what I do, I always say yes. And I really, really struggle to say no, especially if I'm being asked directly. So that's something I've been struggling with during my career. What are you referring to that, Anna?
Yeah. Yeah. What,
Yeah.
tell us yeah, because I don't think I can remember all of the detail on that one, but what's that like for you now? How are things changed, if they've changed?
I think that that's an area where I still need to work on.
Hmm.
Um, I still struggle to say no to people, and that's probably due to the fact that it's really ingrained with me. Um, I always try to be helpful to people, so I really, really struggle to say no. But again, I've learned a few techniques that help me um,
actually, I do remember that. I do remember thinking about um, having a kind of holding phrase or a holding
Yeah.
response. And actually, that's something that I coach on. I think I've coached on many times since then. How and that actually might be quite interesting for people listening. How do you use that? What are the techniques that you use that have worked?
Yeah, that's something I use often. So while before I always felt the pressure to give an answer immediately, I now say things like, okay, let me think about it, or let me check with my team what we can do, so that I buy myself time, and I have the opportunity to think about why I shouldn't really do that particular thing, and come back to the person with either a plan B or some recommendation as to who can do that or who can help. And that feels more comfortable for me, rather than say, no, I don't do it because either it's not part of my job or it's not my priority. Um, that's still too hard. Yeah, that's still too difficult for me. So having that time to, reflect, and come up with a more detailed answer feels better, feels easier. So I
Yeah.
remove myself from that immediate pressure, and
Mhm.
then go back to the person after.
Yeah, and it sounds like you're still being helpful.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, because most of the time when I really don't want to do something, it's not because I don't want to do it, but it's because it's not my priority. And if I do that thing, then I remove time to something which is more important,
Mm.
not for me as an individual, but for my work, right? For my outcome. Um, so most of the time, I actually have reasons to say no. Um,
Yeah.
is that it feels uncomfortable to do it now and then. So I still need that time to think about it.
Mhm.
Um, yeah,
And it sounds similar again to the other bits that we discussed, which was that now it's still it's the work that's the important thing. Because you said, if I always say yes, what suffers is the priorities and the things that I'm really there to do.
yeah,
It's really interesting to kind of hear you be able to put that above you and what you're thinking and feeling about it, and be able to have the work as the center.
yeah. And I
Mm.
guess it's easier to say no when you have reasons that are not directly linked with you, right?
Mhm.
It's easier to say, I can do this because I need to focus on this big project, rather than saying, I don't want to do this because it's not part of my job.
Mhm. Yeah, when you have good reason.
Yeah.
Mm. Yeah. And was there anything else in terms of any outcomes, any changes, anything that you're still working on over the last couple of years, or any reflections that you want to share?
I think one of the biggest outcome is that I don't over prepare. And that's in general, not only in presentations. Um, I think I'm more out there. I accept challenges more. I'm comfortable in leaving my comfort zone, um, because my overall self confidence has grown. So that allows me to put myself in situations where before I would probably protect myself from, which again is a huge change for me.
Yeah. And what's that meant for? What's that been like over the last couple of years, being able to put yourself out of your comfort zone more and accept challenges?
again, it had a positive impact on the quality of the work that I deliver.
And what do you think that will mean for your career in the longer term?
I never asked this question to myself. I don't know. It's the honest answer.
Mm-hmm. Well, I guess you'll find out.
I guess I know, being more prone to accepting new challenges will then help with career progression at some point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
When it comes to over preparing, that also relates to career progression, because before I would have never applied for a job unless I'm like 110%
Mm-hmm.
prepared, while probably now I will feel confident in applying for a position where I'm not 100% sure to tick all the boxes.
Yeah, so you might even put yourself out there to give a new job a chance rather
Yeah,
than, yeah. And that's good, because when they look at the data, the research suggests that men will apply for jobs if they're like tick 50% of the boxes,
yeah,
and women tried to tick 100. You said you try and tick 110.
yeah. Yeah, because if I look back in my career, I've always got promotions because I was pushed by my own line manager. It was always my line manager saying, Daniela, you're ready for the next step. Why you don't apply for this job? Rather than me looking for new opportunities.
Yeah.
That's why I say 110%, because I always accepted the next promotion when I was already doing part of the job.
Mm-hmm.
So I always find myself in a situation where I was doing my job and more, and only then I allowed myself to apply for a new position.
Yeah. And what would you allow yourself to apply for now?
Who knows?
Ooh. Watch this space.
Yeah.
Okay. I always ask this people at the end of the podcast, because like I said at the beginning, it's great for me to talk about the work that clients do and confidence building and how it's possible even when people don't think it is. But it's better for people to hear it from you, who's been there and who understands where people listening to this podcast might be feeling like you felt back in 2021. What would you say to them? What would your advice be to them?
I think my main advice would be to give yourself permission to ask help. Before I've started your coaching program, I was feeling very skeptical, right? I've never asked for help because I thought this is just me being me and nothing can change. What I can say now is that things can change, but you need the right tools. You need the awareness of your issues.
Yeah.
So I would say if you can, ask help. Even talking about it with a friend can help sometimes, because when you explain people where your fears come from, sometimes you realize that there is no reason to fear something, right? But the moment you explain it to someone else, you're able to analyze it better.
Yeah. And I think a lot of the time when people come and do coaching, it's the first time they've ever talked about the things that they're experiencing, the challenges that they're having with their confidence. It's the first time they've ever shared it with anyone. That's quite normal.
Yeah, because you can feel embarrassed, right? It's really embarrassing for me to say that I've canceled dinners with friends because I was rehearsing my presentation until midnight.
Mm.
It takes courage to let that go and tell someone else.
Yeah. And I guess the reason that so many the reason that we keep it inside is you think, oh, it's embarrassing and it takes a lot of courage. But I guess you're saying that when you actually did do that, you found that that was the thing that actually helped.
Yeah,
Yeah. Well, thank you, Daniela.
you're welcome.
Thank you for coming on the podcast. And it's been lovely to have a conversation after 2 years and see what the alumni, the graduates of the Confident at Work program, where are they now? So thank you very much. And I know that there'll be people listening who will understand what you've been saying and will be facing right now some of the challenges that you've been facing. So thank you for doing this for them.
Thank you, Anna.
All right. Bye.
A good night.
I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Daniela as much as I did. It was brilliant to check back in with her after 2 years. A graduate of the Confident at Work program, and she was in the first cohort as well. So it's pretty cool to check back in with her. Last, if you haven't already signed up for the Grow Your Professional Confidence class, it's a free masterclass. I mentioned it at the top of the episode. There is a link in the show notes. You are warmly invited to come and take that class with me. And I hope that you will, because it's a good one. And yeah, that's all. I'll see you in next week's episode. Bye.